quadratic equation that is provided, and we're going to do this by a method called completing the square and then using the square root property. So it'll help us to keep exact answers with radicals if needed. Okay, for the first problem we have x squared minus 6x equals 7. So the first goal to this is always to take that middle number, if you're going to follow the complete the square technique, is to take that middle number which is in front of the x, divide that by 2 to get the number negative 3. We always divide by 2, and then once you get that result, take that result and square it. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, and that is a fill-in number. In other words, we want to fill in the number 9. So again, you get that number by dividing by 2 and then by squaring, but that number that we get we can add to both sides of the equation. So I'm going to put this in a little bubble so you can see that it's a separate thing that we did on the side. And what's the purpose? Well, now the left hand side is a perfect square trinomial. It's x minus 3 quantity squared equals, and 7 plus 9 is just 16. So now we can take the square root of both sides by the square root property and say x minus 3 must be equal to plus or minus the square root of 16, which is 4. And by adding 3 to both sides, we now see that x equals 3 plus or minus 4. And of course, what's 3 plus 4? But 7. And what's 3 minus 4? But negative 1. So the two answers to this one were 7 and negative 1. So let's take a shot. Let's try it again here. X squared plus 4x minus 9. As a first step, I'm going to add 9 to both sides of the equation, so that way we are making it look like the previous form. X squared plus 4x with a gap equals the number 9. Now I'm going to take that number that's in front of x, the number 4, I'm going to divide that by the number 2, so that way I get the number 2, and then I'm going to take that result and I'm going to square it to get the number 4. And all of this work is in a little bubble because I'm going to be adding 4 to both sides of the equation in order to get what I actually want. So what do I actually have now? Now on the left hand side we have a beautiful perfect square trinomial, x plus 2 squared, and on the right we have 9 plus 4, which is 13. So now we can take the square root property, use the square root property to say x plus 2 equals plus or minus radical 13. This time there's no simplification for the rad 13, we'd have to go into decimals. So if we subtract 2 from both sides, I'm going to get x equals negative 2 plus or minus radical 13. Negative 2 plus or minus radical 13. This could of course be written as negative 2 plus rad 13 and separately as negative 2 minus rad 13. But I don't mind the plus minus notation. I hope you don't either. So why don't you pause the video, see if you can do this problem on your own, and assuming you gave it a good shot here, let's do it together so we can see if we got the right answers. So just like before, I'm going to subtract that 3 from both sides, so that way I'm making it look like it's in the form ready for completing the square. X squared minus 10x equals negative 3. Okay, in my little bubble, I'm going to take the negative 10, which is the coefficient to the x. As always, we always divide by 2, which is going to yield negative 5. Then I'm going to take that negative 5 and square it, which would be the number 25. So I'm going to insert a 25 here, and I'm going to insert a 25 on the right. So you can add 25 to one side of the equation as long as you add to both sides. And notice, what does that do for us? Well, x squared minus 10x plus 25 is a beautiful perfect square trinomial again. It's x minus 5 quantity squared, and negative 3 plus 25 is 22. So square root property yields x minus 5 is plus or minus radical 22. No more simplification there. But we can add 5 to both sides to give x equals 5 plus or minus rad 22.